Another question we had in Slack was about our setup. What tools do we use? What like physical tools? What's our home or our office setup like? So let's talk about where you actually get work done, Dan. I know you tend to travel a lot, but you also have your home office as well. What does your home office look like? What are you using? And maybe tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, this is the segment that has like the most YouTube views usually when people show off their productivity setup at home or some sort of magical stuff there. I don't blame people. I watch those videos as well just to get an idea and inspiration from others. But honestly, my setup is pretty simple. So I've had the same setup for the most part, and I might change it actually later this year, depending because my MacBook Pro that is from 2013, it's the Retina MacBook Pro from 2013 that is on its last legs, is going to be phased out at some point this year, I think. So I have that. And then I have a second monitor here, a 4K monitor that I use it with. And then I have a webcam here. It's a Logitech Brio 4K. And I have a standing desk as well. And if you're watching this on video, you might notice that I'm a little bit lower than normal. It's because I'm sitting this time. So I typically like to sit in the morning because I find that when I do my creative work, I do that best. And then typically in the afternoons or after our huddle, I typically try to do most things standing. So whether that's the podcast or admin work or whatever it needs to be done or needs to be reviewed is typically when I do it standing. And so when I do stuff standing, I typically find that I might last for like 30 minutes or so, and then I need to take a break. I can't stand forever. Even if I have a nice mat, which I do here, by forcing yourself to stand, you also have this sense of urgency to get stuff done a little bit faster and keep pace at it. Whereas if you're sitting, you can sit for hours, right? So I find that you get less distracted that way because you're just find yourself like, okay, I can't stand forever. Like this needs to be done. If I'm done with this, I can sit down and take a break. I find that to be very helpful. And the standing desk I have is by multi-table. I've had it for 8 years now. And what I always recommend to people is if you get a standing desk, which I do for the most part recommend, get the biggest tabletop that you can afford. It's a pain to go from having a small tabletop and then later upgrading to a bigger one than the other way. Typically, the more real estate you have on top on your table, the better, because you can just organize stuff and decorate it and however you want to use it. So I would always go for the biggest option if possible. As far as like everything else, mic that I use is a Heil PR40. I've been using that for many years now. And the keyboard that I've been using this for a long time, is the Logitech K750. So what's cool about this keyboard is that it charges using sunlight. So I never have a battery issue or anything like that. It charges using sunlight. And I've had it, I don't know, 6-7 years now, and it's been working fine. I never had to replace a battery or anything. So that's one big convenience that I really like. And I always recommend this keyboard as well. Definitely gets a little dirty. So make sure you clean it every now and then, especially if you have a white keyboard like I do. That's one thing. And then the other one is the mouse. So I have the MX Master 2S mouse by Logitech. And again, we'll make sure we link and mention everything here in the show notes. But it's kind of like a gamer mouse in a way. But I find that the scrolling feature on the thumb, I'm right-handed, on the thumb is really nice and convenient when you're scrolling and clicking. And if you want to go back to the previous page and that kind of thing. Another thing I would always recommend is that people have dedicated AirPods for just their workstation. So I have AirPods version 2 here that I'm using right now as well as we're recording this. And I always have this with me or here at the desk so that if I have a meeting, I pop them in, immediately get connected. And I use Tooth Fairy in case it doesn't. So it makes it really easy to connect. And then I have another AirPods Pro that I just use for day-to-day use when I'm out and about. And I used to have just one. And I find that having a dedicated set of AirPods just for your workstation is a great idea. So I highly recommend doing that. It's worth the investment. And I see Brooke smiling because you know it's true.
Yeah, this is a recent change for me, and I did it on your recommendation because I would always complain about forgetting my AirPods Pro upstairs and I have to run up and get it, or maybe it would have trouble connecting. The only problem with this is, so I have some AirPods V3 that I just keep here at my desk for work, exactly like you said, but I guess I accidentally took them upstairs the other day and I left them in the living room, and my oldest son, who notices everything, right away he saw it and he goes, "How come you have AirPods 3? Where'd those come from?" And it turned into a big family discussion about how dad has 2 pairs of AirPods. And then now my wife is annoyed with me, and my kids tell all their friends, "Can you believe my dad has 2 AirPods? If you're going to do it, keep it on the down low. Keep it just a podcast." But for me, my office is in the basement. I affectionately call it the dungeon. I also have a standing desk. And a tip for that, if you're going to have a standing desk, I used to have another standing desk that was a manual adjustment. It didn't have a motor. And what I found is I just never, ever changed it. So it was technically a standing desk, but once I had it in sitting mode, I just never lifted it. So now I have a fully standing desk with a bamboo top. And yeah, I use it in standing mode while I'm standing right now, mainly for recordings and creation and stuff like that. I should actually use it standing more. So maybe that's an improvement I'll make. For chairs, I have a Herman Miller Mira chair that I bought off of Craigslist. It's okay. I wouldn't say I love it, but it's pretty good. I have a 27-inch Dell monitor. It's kind of like my main monitor. And then I have my MacBook Pro off to the side. That's a 2019 MacBook Pro. Very tempted by the M1 Max and the M1 Ultra and the M2s and stuff like that. So I'm going to be upgrading that at some point, but for now I'm fine. And then I have my laptop and my monitor both held up by arms to free up more space on the desk, and that works pretty well. That's a pretty recent change as well. I use a Surface Pro 7 as my Windows computer, so I always have it here on my desk. So when I want to do something on Windows, I just open it up. I really like it way more than I thought I would. It's a very functional little computer, but it also is kind of like the size of a big, thick iPad. I'm a big fan of the Surface Pros. And yeah, I have the same Logitech Brio 4K camera. I've talked many times on the podcast about my love for my Stream Deck that I use more and more. And for reading, this is a question we had, how do we read? For me, I tend to buy physical books sometimes. Sometimes I take books out from the library with ebooks and read them on my iPad. That's the book I'm currently reading is that way, but probably mostly I get them on the Kindle. So I have a Kindle Paperwhite, a couple years old, and that is probably one of my favorite devices. It's just such a good reading device. Yeah, so big fan of all those.